What's up guys, it's Will back again, and today's review is the newest DC superhero film, Justice League. Directed by Zack Snyder, Justice League takes place not long after the death of Superman, where the world is in a state of instability. That instability only worsens when an evil villain named Steppenwolf arrives and tries to invade Earth. This leads to a handful of Earth's mightiest heroes to begin teaming up and formulating a strategy to take down Steppenwolf and of course save the Earth from his malevolent rule. Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Flash, and Cyborg all form a team called the Justice League, and the rest of the film is spent watching the team figure out what exactly Steppenwolf is after, and of course how to defeat him and save Earth. Alright, so even though DC hasn't had the smoothest of track records so far, besides Wonder Woman, which was actually a really good movie, Justice League still carried some pretty lofty expectations. Whenever you have a superhero team-up film like this, you're expected to raise the stakes and ultimately make the experience feel bigger and better. But we should honestly know by now that Zack Snyder is not the director to deliver you the great DC superhero film that you've always wanted. He's just not. He's an okay director with a few decent films on his resume, but in my personal opinion, he's never directed a great film, and Justice League is once again a total Zack Snyder movie. Justice League is certainly not a terrible movie, quite to the contrary actually, because I'm actually going to recommend you go see it at the end of this video, but I think there are several flaws, particularly with the story and the characters. I think the biggest problem I have with Justice League is that it feels so crammed and so stuffed with so much content, so many storylines, and so much going on that it very rarely feels like there's time to cohesively connect all the storylines at play here. I actually do lay a lot of the blame for this at the feet of Warner Bros, who will probably copyright claim my video now, but so be it. But supposedly there was a report saying that Warner Bros mandated that Justice League not be longer than 2 hours. This is a huge problem to me for a team-up superhero film, especially because there's so many characters and so much going on like I mentioned, especially with the introduction of 3 heroes who we've never seen in any great detail before. Hitting that 2-hour mark and having the story still flow well and actually make sense is a huge practical limitation. There's so many key moments that are just rushed right through because it's obvious that the filmmakers had no time to slow down and actually develop and progress the team in a fluid fashion. The way that every hero joins the Justice League, aside from Batman and Wonder Woman, is fairly anticlimactic because it doesn't feel earned as a viewer. They just sort of show up and say, okay, I'm in, or they're recruited by Batman or Wonder Woman and 5 minutes later they're like, okay, cool, I'm in. There's so many layers cut from these conversations that would really help the creation of the Justice League feel more natural and more earned. The film really struggles in the first half, especially in the assembly of the team like I mentioned, and really one of the biggest problems is in the foundation itself because this film is already in a tough spot because it's rushed. 3 of the 5 heroes have not even been properly introduced and developed at all yet, so the Justice League has a huge burden on their shoulders to actually take the time to develop and introduce these 3 characters on top of all the other things they have to do with the other characters and the villain, and there's just so much going on with not enough time to get to it all. You're asking a 2-hour film to properly introduce these characters and make you care not just about them, but about all 5 or 6 of them, and that's an extremely daunting task for such a short runtime. Avengers had already introduced each of the 4 big Avengers in their own solo films first, so when they all actually team up, you already had an investment in their characters, and you felt more invested in the team because you've already spent time with each of the heroes individually. With Justice League, that enhanced investment, it just isn't there because the development of the heroes and even the team itself is so blazingly fast, there's no time to let anything meaningful sink in. This is just a really poorly paced film, and once again I think the 2-hour mandate is incredibly restricting and really cost the film the opportunity to be a better experience for moviegoers. I don't think anyone would have been upset had this movie been like 2.5 hours long. That would have provided the film more time to delve deeper into each of the heroes and the Justice League as a whole, and it would have made a lot more sense. But here's why I'm going to recommend this movie to you. In pure Zack Snyder style, this movie really does excel in the visual effects and the action departments. Zack Snyder has always had a very cool style when it comes to action specifically, and I think what he and DC did with Justice League is pretty awesome. There are a few hiccups and a few weak spots here and there, but I think this is a really exciting film to watch. I actually think this film had better action than Thor Ragnarok did. Although their powers are sort of vague from time to time, I really enjoyed watching the Justice League team up and kick ass together. I think there's 2 highlight scenes from an action standpoint in the film, and these are both scenes that are some of the best DC has delivered so far in the DCEU. I think most people who go to see Justice League are hoping for just that, awesome action, and I think while you don't get a ton of it, when it does arrive, it's definitely satisfying. Visually, yeah, the movie looks great, besides a few flaws here and there. For one, Steppenwolf looks very video game-ish. I think the CGI on him was fairly lacking overall. He's not a complete immersion killer, but he's certainly not exceptionally crafted either. And also, Superman's mustache. Yes, Superman is in this movie, and they had to CG his mustache away for the reshoots, and something just looks a little off with him. They did a decent job with it, but it's definitely a little jarring when you notice it. Let's briefly talk about Steppenwolf though. I think as far as villains go, he's nothing special. There's basically no time spent with him besides when he's in direct contact with members of the Justice League or other heroes on Earth. So in other words, there's no behind the scenes look into his psyche or his plans or anything like that really. You only see him when he comes in direct contact with Earth's heroes, and because of that, there's no time to really get super invested in him either. As for the heroes which you obviously spend the most time with, I think they're all actually pretty great. One thing DC did do really well was the casting. I think Batman is probably the weakest link because DC has really struggled to make him fit within the current version of the Justice League, where everyone has insane powers and Batman's just kind of like, I have a Batarang and a Batmobile. He's a good leader, but he's mostly relegated to the cleanup work while the more powerful heroes do the heavy lifting. But acting wise, I always enjoy Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, especially after I became invested in her character from her solo film. Jason Momoa is a really awesome choice for Aquaman because he's a unique take on the character. He's sort of a jokester, but a temperamental tough guy, and I really thought he was a great addition. Cyborg, played by Ray Fisher, was also really cool. He was one of my favorites because I thought he looked really awesome, and I loved his super serious personality. And of course, Ezra Miller as the goofy Barry Allen the Flash was the comedic relief and also really great here. While we're on the topic of comedy, you can definitely see Joss Whedon's impact, his stamp on this film. There's a decent amount of comedy injected into scenes where the dialogue is sort of quippy and very Joss Whedon-like. I actually thought it worked pretty well though. I didn't feel like it was forced or out of place or out of alignment in tone with the rest of the film. It was actually kind of a nice balance, and I found myself laughing quite a bit at the clever jokes. But overall, is Justice League a disaster? No. Is it great? No. But it's a serviceable superhero film that's probably still worth your time if you're a big fan of the genre. I thought it had some excellent visuals and action, really strong performances, and a nice balance of comedy and drama. Sadly, I also felt the pacing was off, the whole story felt rushed and unbalanced, and the villain was pretty underwhelming. I'm gonna give Justice League a 6.5 out of 10, and generally recommend you watch this one in theaters, but only if you're a big fan of the superhero genre. Otherwise, you can pass on this one. So did you guys see Justice League yet? What did you think of it? And if not, let me know why not. And also let me know your favorite DC film in the current DCEU. Mine would be Wonder Woman, obviously. That's all for now though. This is WillFoxification signing off. See you in the next review.